Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to NPU Live. I'm Keri Rodriguez.
And I'm Tim Langan.
Today is May 21st, 2020, and we're glad to be live with you this morning on the National Parents Union live stream. Very exciting Thursday morning. Very big day in this house. What's going on, Dad?
Not that much. Just my oldest son, Max, turned 9.
Oldest? That means you've kept somebody alive for 9 years.
That's right. It's incredible.
Who would have thought?
That's right. He has
oh
to
my
starve.
Goodness, it's amazing.
Right.
So very special day in this
house. Busy.
It's going to be very busy. There's going to be a lot of weird food eaten because
weird food.
The law of the Langans is that on your birthday, you get to pick what everybody in this house eats. So
yep. We will be having Chinese food for lunch and Taco Bell for dinner, and I do not have a problem with any of that.
Oh man,
I'm excited for Taco Bell.
We're gonna need salad tomorrow. Yes,
we will.
Oh my goodness,
I'm excited.
And plus a cake. Tim made a cake. It's gonna be very, very exciting. Maybe at the end of this show, as a special teaser treat, we will show you a picture
of the cake.
We
might do that.
It's pretty epic. You'll have to explain what it is.
It's a pretty awesome cake.
It is. It's pretty awesome. And, the actual cake itself was really good. Had a little sampling.
That's right.
I'm impressed. First time this man has ever made a cake.
First cake I made. Well, technically the cupcakes.
That's right. And Max will also point out.
He will point that out. That's not a cake. Those are multiple cupcakes.
Like a cake.
That's right.
Kind of pull it apart. But when it's your first go,
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
cupcakes.
What do you want to?
Pretty good. I was impressed by the effort. Fantastic.
Thank you very much. Well, I had your guidance, so thank you very much.
Good. So exciting day in this house. But a lot to get to in the news. We have some fabulous guests.
We have some great
guests. Today is also Dad to Dad. We want to remind you.
4 p.m.
Our program for dads, by dads.
4 p.m.
Don't miss it. Always an exciting show.
So listen, guys, I know it's going to be tough tonight. Michael Scott can't be on the show tonight, but please tune in anyway. Tune in anyway. It will still be a wonderful show.
Well, who's going to soften you guys up?
It's going to be a hard show. It's going to be a rough and tough show. There might be some tackling, some fist pumping. Maybe we'll eat some chicken right off the bone. Right off the bone. Maybe go kill a snake and dig a hole in the backyard. Yeah, Michael Scott, if you're a fan of Dad to Dad, as I am, Michael Scott is really, he's the teddy bear of the show. He is the teddy bear.
He softens you guys up,
right.
Gets you talking about love.
That's right.
Love bubbles.
That's right. So if you want
say I love you to your kids. Is
that's
that
right.
Okay? I love it. So what are you talking about today?
Today we're talking about family traditions.
Ooh.
Yeah.
This is a good day for
family
traditions.
That's good. Today is a family. That's right. I'm so glad you told me that, because I'll be quite honest with you. Couldn't think of a family tradition. Just thought of one. Thanks a lot there.
Well,
choosing what the whole family eats on your birthday.
That's right. And maybe you could be actively eating some more your second round of Chinese
I'll be having some noodles.
Yeah. Oh my, because there's going to be a lot of noodles. We were given very specific instructions this morning that there better be a lot of.
Well, I have 150 boxes of ramen, so I'm just going to pump that up.
Dad, come on. We got to go with the fresh lo mein.
Fine.
Chicken.
Just saying, it's not cheap.
Man, it's going to be great.
See what I can do.
Vegetables tomorrow for us. But this morning, kind of an interesting start. We're still, here we are in week 10 of the quarantine, and this show, For Parents, by Parents, this whole union, For Parents, by Parents, just some continued interesting struggles when it comes to trying to access online learning. But we're in week 10. We're in week 10, folks. And there's some stuff that we really should have figured out. I know I was a little frustrated earlier in the week. I get a link from my first grader's teacher saying, we're going to have a parent teacher dialogue. I'm like, great. Down to talk to Miss Dowling. Let's do this. I'm excited about that. I get on, and there's actually 5 teachers. There's 50 plus parents.
I heard about that. I actually heard it because there were 50 parents on it.
And I was like, oh my God. So this is not just my kids' class. So not a lot of information about what I was stepping into. It's about 1:30 in the afternoon, by the way. So I was like, oh, well, I think I canceled stuff and kind of moved things around so that I could actually hop on this meeting. But hop on there, and a good chunk of the meeting was actually spent on parents trying to help the teachers figure out how to use Zoom in week 10. Week 10.
I thought you were on honestly, God, I thought you were on a Zoom webinar tutorial. And I'm walking by and I'm thinking, why is she taking that? She knows how to use Zoom.
It was very bizarre. And you know what? I get it. the technology is new. Not everybody is tech savvy, but this is week 10. And, this is kind of a survival skill right now.
Right.
I don't think most parents were really super familiar with Zoom. We had to learn it. I was not a Zoom master.
And then you had to teach it.
And then we had to teach people how to use it as we figured it out. And but week 10, you should be able to send out a link.
Yep.
To invite people if you're hosting a Zoom, and maybe share your screen. Like, that's really what we were asking for. And the thing that really got me, it's fine. Parents are here to help. Helping these teachers kind of come along, but it was a big joke. Like, that was the thing that really was off-putting. So I'm not doing this to kind of make an example out of my kids' teachers or anything, but maybe as a learning lesson. Parents, you're inviting us to a 1:30 meeting. It's for many of us either in the middle of the workday. We're trying to, I saw so many kids on that Zoom, which is fine because we're here in our homes trying to help our kids with the lessons that you've given us. But if you're going to take our time and you want to interact with us, do it in a respectful way. Try to do your best to figure out technology so that it's accessible for parents, so that they can have confidence in you when my teacher is sitting there giggling.
That's right.
Saying,
goodness. I don't know what day it is. Now, I know we say that on this show, but we really do know what day it is.
Yeah, and again,
Another thing too, since we're giving some pro tips here, you can send out a link ahead of time. You can do recurring meetings, which means, say hypothetically, you were meeting my kid every day at 9 a.m. every Thursday.
Or every day, yeah.
Or every day, you can send out the same link, so I'm not scrambling at 8:56 a.m. Trying to log him in, because it was sent to my email. He doesn't have access to my email. Just saying. And pick a password and stick to it, guys. Don't send me 2 passwords at 8:56 because I don't know which one to do.
And when you think about it, again, we're in week 10. It's just the ongoing struggle of folks who I think are really well-meaning,
very well-meaning,
trying to do their best, but just not taking into account the lives of parents. I mean, we're lucky we get to work from home. We're pretty, technologically savvy. We try to do our best to help our kids get through this. But there are parents that, frankly, 9 o'clock. They're already out the door. They're
working.
At work. They've been working since 7.
Working.
Or they work the overnight. There's all these. There's a lot of different context. And again, we're all trying to do the best that we can, but it's just. We also see this translate into the policy space.
Yeah.
And I think yesterday was a doozy for us in the policy space.
I just want to say good luck today to the Massachusetts Parents United contingent of Natasha Maggie Medry, Rodolfo Aguilar, our leaders from Brockton and Lowell.
And Lawrence.
And Lawrence as well. Marielle Novas from MEEP, who will be going to DESE today to advocate for families who were previously left out of the Return to School Committee.
Oh my goodness. So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education here in Massachusetts put together this very bizarre group of folks for the Return to School Working Group. This is the group of people who are going to decide, what are the guidelines in Massachusetts for returning to school.
I thought it was the 20-year reunion of my Auntie Catholic high school graduation class.
Oh my God.
That means it was really white.
Holy crap. I think there was one superintendent of color, our friend Pat Tutwiler from Lynn. You had, I think there were more cops on there than there were parents. There was one parent from the Massachusetts PTA from Rehoboth, Massachusetts, which is like.
Is that in Middle Earth? I don't even know where that is.
It's like this quaint little town in southeastern Massachusetts. God bless you, Rehoboth. But oh my God, you don't have any parents of color. You don't have any ELL parents. You don't have any parents of color with children with special needs. You don't have anybody from Boston or gateway cities. Holy crap. Are you serious?
But parents spoke up.
Yes.
And by speak up, I mean you jumped on the phone.
Oh man. I blew a gasket. It is rare for me to get that. Well, maybe it's not that rare, but I was pretty fired up. But I knew who to call, and it was our team of parent leaders from across the state. And honestly, I think we could have gotten 50 names on that. But
we probably could.
I fought for 5. We got 5. So parents are going to be represented. Parents of color, urban parents.
Yeah.
Part of the conversation on school reopening in Massachusetts. I just don't understand how you do this without parents as part of the conversation. Like, these are our children. And again, I'm just kind of stunned. You have, God bless the Needham Police Department, but they're represented on the return to school workforce, but you have parents in Lawrence, in Lowell, in Boston, the state capital are not a part of that. How does that even happen? So thankfully, they will be represented, but I got to tell you, we're watching you folks, and this is not going to be acceptable. And I've got a message to all of our other delegates from the National Parents Union, our 200, plus organizations all across the country. Do not allow this to happen.
It's happening here. It's happening in Minnesota, Arkansas,
and
Detroit.
We know that we have literally the fiercest parent activists and advocates across the country as part of this organization. They are watching, they are paying attention, and they're going to fight for their seats. And they shouldn't have to fight. We have not been invited to these tables, but trust me, we will be at these tables. And we have something to say. We have a well-informed opinion. We have a Bill of Rights that we're going to be fighting for. And we're not going to allow you to make these decisions about what's going to happen to our children without us. Also of interest, got into a back and forth with another state chief yesterday, a little conversation I had with somebody asking me, well, Keri, with this Bill of Rights that the National Parents Union has put out, it seems like you don't want schools to open at all. Well, what do you expect us to do?
But
I'm sorry.
But there's actually guidance on schools reopening in that document.
Yes, you must read the Parent Bill of Rights.
I know it's long. I know it's about 3.5 pages.
And I know it's challenging, but guess what? And I think you've heard me say this. I've been talking to reporters all week, as we issued this. Low-income Black and brown children, are not your experiments. They are just as valuable and beautiful and needed and important as wealthy white students. And you cannot tell me that wealthy white communities are not going to have the highest of expectations around what schools are going to look like, what social distancing is going to look like, what health and safety is going to look like, if they are going to allow their children to come back into your buildings. So guess what? All of those requirements, all of those expectations are going to be fought for and demanded by low-income Black and brown families across the country. Our children are not your experiments. You're not going to try things out to see if your health and safety policy works. And if kids get infected or kids get sick or something happens, well, I guess we've learned a lesson. Not with our kids. Sorry. So when it comes to the American Academy of Pediatrics and their guidelines, the CDC, the Environmental Protection Agency, and all of the other doctors and scientists who are giving you recommendations, that is where our Bill of Rights came from. And until school systems, all kinds, we don't care about the governance model. If you're a charter school, if you're a district school, if you're a private school, if you're a parochial school, if you're Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
If you're hooking your kid up to the Matrix.
We don't care. If you're going to engage with our kids, you're going to do it in a way that is healthy and safe and is disinfected and is ready and prepared with a real plan that you're going to implement. And we're going to be checking on that plan to make sure it's executed well, because let me tell you something, every school will tell you, oh, we clean every night. In practice, I don't think so. One of our guests today, who was a student at BPS, her kids went to BPS, her grandparents go to BPS, Boston Public Schools. She's going to give she's going to give us her firsthand account.
She will.
Edith Bazell is going to be with us, who I am so excited about.
Yeah.
And
she's on fire today. I feel like I've hosted 3 shows today already. It's great.
And I am so ready for her, and I hope you are as excited as I am, because she is a force to be reckoned with, and a leader, as an educator, as a mama, and a social justice advocate that I just can't wait to talk to. But we're going to be talking directly with her.
And if you're wondering where it talks about reopening on the Family Bill of Rights, you can do Control F. Control F and type in reopen.
That's right.
And it will follow the segments. Little nerd fact for you there. Control F and type in the word reopen. And
you'll find how many times we say reopen.
Reopen. The
idea is to reopen, but to reopen safely. And if you cannot reopen, having a plan that is based in equity for all of our children. We want an equity-infused educational recovery. We're not going back. Our polling actually says we've done the work. We've talked to American families. By a 2-to-1 margin, they say they do not want their kids returning to the same status quo that they left. They expect our system to evolve and innovate based on the context that they've now been given. And that means, the fact that we got caught flat-footed in this situation because, years of resistance to innovation, to adding technology, parents aren't interested in your political turf wars and you're whining about how it's too hard.
That's right. We're fighting for justice.
It's time to figure it out, and that's it. So,
and this is in Massachusetts. This isn't just in Rehoboth. This is worldwide. We need help. In the news today, in the U.S., we have over 1.5 million cases now of COVID-19. Again, that's based on accurate testing, which there are issues with that. And we have almost 94,000 deaths in the U.S., which is ridiculously high. That's almost a third of the cases. 330,000 deaths worldwide right now. So the pandemic is actually getting worse. It's not getting better. In Brazil alone, they have 20,000 new cases a day. 20,000 new cases a day. Talking about testing in the U.S. right now, it is very disorganized. Texas, Virginia, Vermont, we're actually combining different tests and jacking up the numbers. Diagnostic and antibody tests, they're skewing the numbers. And second on that, how many people filed for unemployment last week?
2.4 million. Another
2.4 million. So again, depression level error unemployment. We need guidance, not just in our school system, not just in our urban areas locally, but nationally too.
Yeah, it's just stunning that how politics has really just so corrupted this entire situation. If we got hit by a nuclear bomb that killed almost 100,000 people, and we had no idea whether or not anybody else was infected or what was happening, do you think we'd be handling the situation the same way? Almost 100,000 people in the United States have died. And we don't even have accurate testing. We don't have coordinated, organized testing happening. Half the tests, and this is another conversation we've been having in the National Parents Union is around, whether or not we are getting proportional access. We know that our communities are disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. We're not even getting access to good testing. A lot of people don't even want to engage with the test because there has not been any restorative justice around historical disparities and, using our communities as guinea pigs. There's a lot of distrust. There's not a lot of communication. There's a lot of vilification of communities that have higher instances of COVID-19.
That's right.
You saw the very clear shift that we have been talking about for months now. Once we saw the disproportional impact on low-income communities of color, suddenly it's not so bad and we can start opening up because this is a disease that or a virus that is only hitting Black, brown, and poor people. All of this, the racism, the politics that is just keeping us from making smart decisions that are going to help. We have almost 100,000 people dead. How many more people are we going to lose? It's stunning.
And Natasha, she's getting warmed up here. Let's demand what our babies deserve.
That's right.
We deserve a better life than this.
Yeah, we're going to use our voices in any way we possibly can. We'll be talking with Edith more about that.
We'll talk about Edith. We're talking about Kwame tomorrow.
Yes.
And on Friday, Kwame, and on Friday, we've got a lot of advocates, a lot of shows today, not just Dad to Dad. We've got the Apparent Voice with Bernita tomorrow.
That's right.
She's fired up. We got Christina Laster on fire from California today at 2. Get the Spanish NPU on Dora. Woof.
Dora. NPU Live in Espanol, which comes up at noontime. And I do want to shout out, I know tonight at 7:30, NPU Live will turn it over to Vivette Dukes and Speak Your Truth. We want to send a very special congratulations this morning to John Dukes.
That's right.
Vivette and Speak Your Truth, advocating for formerly incarcerated families and families who have been impacted by incarceration. Her husband, John,
graduated from Mercy College. So proud of that guy.
term in prison and was just freed and is now graduating from college.
That's crazy.
He graduated yesterday.
So proud of him.
Oh my gosh, we are incredibly proud. I was so excited that we were able to hop on his college graduation. We came through on the Zoom so we could celebrate. So
that's right.
It was really cool.
That's good. You know who I'm proud of?
Who?
I'm proud of Mira Brown. Every day she gets up in the morning. She's an hour behind us in Austin.
Thinking about how
Throws
she can
it together.
help parents across the country. And
That's
she's
right.
joining us live from Austin, Texas.
So let's
Good
bring her on
morning,
here.
Mira.
Hey, Mira, how you doing there?
We were a little fired up this morning, so poor Mira, she got an earful first thing.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Never had it so good, Mira.
Never had it so good.
Good dream. I'm blessed.
We are blessed. Oh my, but a lot to talk about here. Could you imagine putting together? I don't know what people are thinking. You're creating a return to school working group, and you include one parent from, God bless them, Rehoboth, Massachusetts. Holy crap! There's a list of like 20 white folks. One poor black superintendent.
And I don't know any of them.
Who is brilliant, but holy crap! Talk about walking in there, yeah, and being the sole person of color in that whole committee.
Yeah.
And
That's
Tutwiler's a beast, though. That's
Yeah.
my boy right there. But I just like what are we thinking? It's like immediately like it's like we've completely taken our mind off of equity because situation. Racism did not take a break because we had a pandemic. How many times have I said that?
That's right.
Holy crap,
A lot.
Mira. I'm stunned this morning. So
and it's I love seeing you fired up. I love the way Tim looks at you too when you're fired up. It's when the side it's a look of love and respect, but I love when he just kind of was like, I'm gonna
I'm back, staying in my lane, just going with the flow.
and a happy birthday to Max.
Oh, thank you so much. He's excited.
Oh my gosh, he woke up at 6 o'clock this morning, burst in, was like, it's my birthday.
And I'm like, hey, what?
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. And then he luckily he fell back to sleep till 7:30.
Yeah, this is a kid usually you have to drag out of bed.
But not today.
Not today. He was like, oh my God, it's my birthday.
I don't get one of those kids. Like, how do you make one of those kids who just like my kids are up every morning? Like, you do not have to drag them out of bed. They're dragging us out of bed. I want one of those. Like, how do you order one of those? The ones that sleep.
I swear to God, you could set a clock by them during the week. Oh God, I can't get up.
I literally pull them out of the bed on the weekends. They're like, hey, it's Daddy. What's up? You want to eat a Cliff Bar? Woo!
Yes,
I'm like, oh.
Like, it's like, dude, this is the day to
Right.
sleep. That has to be some kind of phenomenon that I am not familiar with, but I swear, it's like
Parents, help us out if you have an answer to that.
If you have an answer, because parents always have that, and I want to hear from his grandmas. I want to hear from the elderly. They always have, which will tell us to like we need to flip them over or flip them back. They always
rub their feet in vinegar or something.
I'm willing to do anything to get these babies to sleep. Oh my goodness.
My kids don't sleep. They're sharing a room right now because I was sharing with Keri yesterday that everything is breaking in my house right now during a pandemic. And so over the weekend, we noticed that our shower has been like leaking into Gabriel's room, and there's all this mold. And it's just like, and so anyway, so Gabriel's been sleeping in Miles's room, and we put like a little mattress down. And if they didn't sleep before, they're definitely not sleeping now because it's like just late at, up until like 10 p.m. And it's adorable because like last night I went to bed early I was just so tired. Like I got in bed when they got in bed.
What time do they stay up till?
10 p.m.
Yes, that's exactly what happens to my kids too. They sleep in the same bed. That makes me feel so much better.
10 p.m. Like
Yep.
What?
Chit chat.
Yeah, chit chatting.
I say that all the time. I'm like, these two are together, or all of them. They're all together all day long. What do they have to talk about?
It's like they haven't met before.
Anything to not go to bed. Anything to stall bedtime. It's like the last thing I want to do at night, right? When the kids go to bed, Ben and I are kind of like, hey. Okay, you're gonna go that way. I'm gonna go that way. Okay, great. No talk, right? No. Okay, great. Because we're just done, and they're just,
Well, I asked them the other day. I was like, so like, what are you guys talking about? Like, because I'm really curious, because you can hear it's cute.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh,
Doesn't make any
like,
sense.
they're not fighting, but they're just like giggling, very energetically
Yes.
chatting together. And so Max told me, he's like, oh, we were talking about Chinese food. We really like Chinese food, and how much Chinese food we could eat at one time, and what kind we would eat. If
We'll
we could,
we'll
if
find
we
out
could have
today.
a buffet of like all. So that's what they're talking about. They're talking about
Sure, whatever.
food they like.
Well,
Yeah.
it was kind of endearing, and this sort of leads to our tip for today. But it was kind of endearing because I mean, my youngest is 2.5, right, and Gabriel's 6.5, and so they don't really have, the 2.5-year-old is just really starting to
Yeah.
communicate and talk, and it's quite articulate comparative to where my 6-year-old was at that age. But so last night they're in bed and I'm kind of drifting off, to sleep. And I say early, it was like 9:30, 10 o'clock, and they're still going. And I hear them talking. And this is the first time they've actually talked to each other.
Nice.
Like legitimately talk to each other and not about each other or yell at each other, but have a conversation. And I hear Miles go, Gabe, he calls him Gabe, are you happy? Gabe, are you happy? And I hear Gabriel go, what? And then I hear Miles go, Gabe, story, tell story. Gabe, tell story. And then I hear Gabriel, and I've kind of drifted off and fell asleep, start to tell a story. And it was just like, it was one of those moments as a parent, right? That like, on the one hand, you want to be like, go to sleep. And on the other hand, you're like, oh, and then they woke up this morning and they're back to bickering and fighting. So I'll take the moment.
Well, and I feel better too that you drift off to sleep, because there are many nights where we fall asleep, I feel like long before like the conversation is over.
I'm like, they're safe. One's in a crib, one's asleep. They're safe. They'll be fine. They'll go to sleep when I want to go to sleep. Mama's going to bed. I'm tired.
I always want to say, here's the birthday boy right now. I always want to say, like, dudes, like, if you want to chat, like, do it, like, at least, like, pretend like you're trying to be quiet. Like,
No, there's no pretending.
I'm going on there. And I think we're having a Zoom crisis right now. So Tim's going to step away.
No worries. There's always a Zoom crisis.
Anyway, so
should we get to the tip?
Yes, let's get to it.
Let's get to it. So I wanted to talk about storytelling and the power of storytelling. And so, and what does it really mean when our kids ask us to tell them a story? And I don't know if in your household, and this might be a younger kid thing, but I think it comes up in different ways. I mean, storytelling is essentially the oldest art form, right, that we have around the world. And I know in my household, especially I think because Gabriel can't quite read yet, but even so, it's always daddy, because mommy doesn't tell cool stories, but it's always daddy, tell me. It's like literally the moment he wakes up this morning, he comes downstairs.
It's the opposite. Daddy tells the worst stories, and I apparently am the best storyteller of all time.
Mommy, tell me a story, right? Daddy, tell me
a story with your mouth is big. Like, that's what we say. Tell me a story with your mouth, from your
because
mouth.
there's a difference, right? Reading is so, and I think that's what's so important. When we talked, I think it was last week on, and you're going to talk, we were talking sort of off screen with Edith about this, like reading is critical, right? We all like, and all learning is built on reading and literacy and just 20 minutes a day, right? And reading and storytelling, to your point, are super connected. They're similar and they're important and they're connected. But there is a power, there's a superpower to storytelling. And I think that you're getting, you're exactly right. And for two, and what made me really think about this is for 2 years now, every single morning, my husband has been telling the Flower Night story. Going on 2 years, right? And he builds on it every morning. It's the same thing. Daddy, tell me the Flower Night story. And so the power of storytelling resides in, or let me take a step back there. Storytelling, there's been 70 years of science on storytelling, which I think, again, every time I dive in, I get so interested and like fascinated. Also that like there are scientists out there that get to do research on just things like storytelling. Like, I just think it's interesting. But it helps us, storytelling essentially helps us think and speak and make meaning of our lives. It helps our kids when you're telling them, a story. It gives our kids sort of a sense of direction, how to respond to situations, right? When you think about how you weave stories in. But the real superpower is the connection between the storyteller and the listener. It's the relationship that's happening. And so when your kids are saying, tell me a story, or tell me a story by your mouth, right? In your case, they're asking for attention, but they're actually requesting a relationship, right? And so we've talked a lot about mattering, and it's very similar. And so what learning science calls that is a secure attachment. And a secure attachment, that bond with an adult, is critical to kids being able to develop stable, healthy relationships when they grow up and in their future. And they start practicing that, they start seeking that out in things like, tell me a story, right? Sit down with me, connect with me, be with me, give me your undivided attention. And so the what?
It goes back to mattering again.
It all goes back to mattering, and sort of that attachment and that bond. It's another piece of the puzzle, and it's all connected. And I find that actually so incredibly helpful, because there are times that Gabe will say, Mommy, tell me a story. And I get so stressed out because I'm not as good a storyteller as my husband. And I start getting really like stressed and anxious and trying to figure out a good story. And he doesn't care about the story. When you look at it that way, he cares about what he's asking for in that moment, is that moment with you, to connect with you, right? To bond with you, or to bond with me, in that he's asking for closeness. And I think that that's really helpful, that oftentimes that's all they're seeking, and that's what they need in the moment. And so what are a couple of things we can do when our kids say, tell me a story? And the first is, in this case, like in mine, is just go for it, right? Like, we are, to our kids, no matter what story it is, to our kids, we are masterful storytellers, because we know them, we understand them, we uniquely know what they need and what they're interested in, right? And we can weave all of that into the stories we tell. In this case, it's also not about quality. It is actually about quantity, right? The amount of minutes you sit down. Hi, Tim. Get the Zoom figured out. I can hear it happening outside right now. But what is the code again? Where's the sheet with the password?
We gotta figure it out. It's all good. It's all good.
That's happening right now in my house. But in this case, multitasking is apparent. In this case, it's about, for storytelling, it really is actually not about quality. It is about quantity. It is showing their kids your matter. It's taking those 5, 10, 15 minutes, sort of similar rule, right, to reading, sitting down together. And it doesn't have to be an amazing adventure or anything to that. It's just, it's that moment together. Interestingly, kids, showing your soft side is really important in storytelling as well. The science points out that, right, that is how kids learn vulnerability. We talked a lot about vulnerability, Brene Brown, right? Empathy, all of those things are interconnected. And one of the best way that kids can learn that is through storytelling. And kids love learning, embarrassing moments, silly stories, things that bring in yourself, right? And so a lot of my stories will be things that Mommy does that are embarrassing or silly, right? And Gabriel responds to that and loves that, and and he learns how to react to situations, right, that way, when I throw myself into it. The other thing is like the touch. So Keri, you once mentioned, right, that every night, that you, and I can't remember which one of your sons this is, but you sit down, you guys snuggle, you get a closeness, right? You check in, you have that moment. That is super important to storytelling, right, as well. Because again, kids are seeking that out, and that is part of the superpower of being in that moment together. And two others are, sometimes it's being a listener yourself, right? So they'll come to you and they'll say, Mommy or Daddy, tell me a story. And I've noticed, with Gabriel, he'll start jumping into, right, wanting to add to the story. And what's super helpful about that, especially with younger kids, is it's a really helpful tool to figure out what's going on up here, right? Because again, our minds try to make meaning out of chaos, and storytelling is a way especially for younger kids, but older as well, sort of give you a clue into what's going on. What are they worried about? What are they feeling? What are they thinking? Like what, you see sort of the wheels turning, and it will come out in a story. And so oftentimes tell me a story is also an invitation for connection and sort of learning where your kid is emotionally, right? And understanding that.
We find here also like a point of curiosity. Where it gets the mind turning. So I tell them a story about how I am the queen of the donuts, and it's my secret identity, and people don't know. And I have a donut factory, and that's I have donut minions that come out and protect everyone, and all of this stuff. But I say every night when you go to sleep, I have a switch underneath the bed, and I put up my donut force field so that the broccoli king can't get to us inside the house. So we cover the whole house in donuts. And Dylan, I swear to God, this kid has been searching for my switch. and he has tried. Every adult in the house is like, Dad, where's the switch?
Where's the switch?
Papa, where is the switch? Do you know where the switch is? Can you tell me? Can you just show me? Because I just want to see it. And he's thinking through, like, we'll be walking someplace in the middle of the day, and he'll be like, so when the force field comes out, does it cover the shrub part, or does it just go up on the house? Like, he's really thinking through the details of the story, which I think is really.
It never stops, right? Because remember, our brains never actually switch off. Hence we talked about boredom, but like our brain and storytelling is yet another way for kids, to your point, to think critically and problem solve, right? And they're putting all of these pieces and keep their brain engaged and sort of comprehend things and put puzzle pieces together in their head. I mean, it's quite fascinating because like we'll be walking, it'll be like 3 days later, and all of a sudden, Gabe will ask a question of my husband about some part of the story. And my husband's like, oh God, what did I say about that part of the story again? Right? Because like he's just going, just he can't even remember half the story he tells anymore, but because they're still thinking about it. It's really amazing. Or it comes out in play. And that's another really interesting part to add into here is, you tell a story and then you'll see, like, we'll notice that it will come out in how Gabriel's playing. And that is their way, right, of really internalizing it and problem solving and thinking about it some more and using their own curiosity to sort of take that story a step further and kind of embellish it.
I like to tell him.
I tell the best stories. I tell the best stories. Okay, my stories are incredible. I have heroes like Paperclip Man and Bookbinder Girl, and villains like Crazy Octopus Man. They love it. The stories are a minute. That's it.
Mine. That's how my kids feel about my stories. They when I'm like, hey, let's do some stories, and sometimes I'll be like, let's do some stories, and Gabe's like, Daddy, and I'm like, I just offered,
Can Keri tell us a story?
No, Keri doesn't know how to tell stories. She's a horrible storyteller, and she's asleep.
And she says, don't wake mommy up for a story. I'll tell you a story, and yeah. But to your point, right, is it's a quite a superpower, and it's a superpower we can use, right, in storytelling with regards to that bond and that secure attachment and that comprehension and the critical, I mean, everything, right? Their minds are engaged, they're getting that mattering, that undivided attention, they're learning, they're making sense emotionally of how they're feeling. And so one of those things, right? Read, tell stories. If there's nothing else we can do, they're incredibly powerful for our kids right now, especially right now.
This is a great tip. I love it. I think it's going to make me a little bit more thoughtful about storytelling, because sometimes at the end of the day when you get that
tired,
it's a story, it's like, oh, but it's actually really important.
I think I'm going to appreciate how much more important my stories are.
Paperclip Man is going to be really important now.
I'm going to point it out to them. How much they need my stories.
Well,
Mira says Paperclip Man is a good story, and you're gonna listen.
That's right.
Just leave it to me and Ben. We got this.
Yeah, you guys got this. If you can take it, that would be great. I'll put you on Zoom, Keri, and you can tell a story for all of our kids together.
Start looking for donuts at your house too.
I like the story.
I find that the key is always like finding, some piece of it. You've got to connect it to something in the house. Like one of my stories ended with, and as a reward, they gave me one of the cantaloupes that I was able to rescue. And I knew we had cantaloupe cut up in the refrigerator. And they were like, we don't believe you. That's not true. I'm like, look here.
Well, where'd it go?
Where's the cantaloupe? Right here.
Right.
I never would have thought of doing that. Now I've learned something. Thank you. I always learn something new.
Maybe that is true.
Right.
Yeah. Now go eat it. It's healthy too.
There's the next word. Oh, this is our victory cantaloupe. From saving the neighborhood from somebody who's stealing cantaloupes.
Crazy octopus man.
Yeah.
Crazy octopus man. I love it.
All over the neighborhood.
Don't rip that off, Mira.
Yeah,
I'm totally going to. And paper clip and binder or whatever it was called. They're all being. I'm using them all.
Yeah, we should actually have some kind of like group think about this because it's hard to come up with new ideas.
That's right.
Crowdsource our stories.
Right.
On NPU in the comments, crowdsource your stories. We will all use them.
It's for us. We need more content.
I don't.
He doesn't. He's smart. He'll go to Staples. You know.
Yeah.
Staples catalog.
That's right. It's Whiteout Girl.
Yeah, I heard that.
Do people still use whiteout? Would our kids even know what that is?
Who does?
They will, Mira. It's a discussion point.
Mira Brown joining us from Austin.
Have a nice day, Mira. Thank you so
Mira.
much.
Thank you both. See you next week.
Can't wait.
So excited to welcome our next guest, who is a friend of ours from Boston. She is incredible education advocate, consultant, leader, but most importantly, she is a mama.
That's right.
She is a grandmama. She's a former student of Boston Public Schools. She has seen the district through all different kinds of trials and tribulations, and she is still fighting for justice for our kids. And we're just so blessed to be joined by Edith Bazell, who is joining us live from Boston. And you know, I not only love her for her tremendous brain, but she's also a beautiful friend. I have literally cried on her shoulder talking about my babies, and she's just such a wonderful blessing in my life to have her wisdom and guidance. So Edith, I love you and your smile. I'm so glad that you're with us this morning.
I am so happy to be here.
Edith, tell me about how you're making it through. It is week 10. You know, we're going to talk about, you know, how we're all fighting for justice here and the craziness that we see all the time. But I want to know how you're doing, how your family's doing, how your grandbabies are doing. How is it going for you and how are you making it through?
Well, you know, I think, you know, we're doing the best we can, as all families are. You know, we're trying to use physical distancing and wearing our masks. With my granddaughter in particular, who's 7 years old, we spend a lot of time at the Anno Arboretum. My motto is don't sweat the small stuff. You know, eat what's available, you know, enjoy quiet time, family time. Just to echo on story time, we've been doing a lot of story time, and the teacher in me says that I have to say something about that.
Yeah.
So with story time, it's really critical to, you know, I love to tell parents to stop, pause, and ask a question. Say, oh, well, why do you think that happened? What do you think is going to happen next? Oh, can you believe that happened? So really inject students into the story. And sometimes when you read a story redundantly over and over, have them to fill in certain pieces, stop and say, oh, so what do you think the next part is? It's your turn. And so really develop that child agency, that child leadership, have them to become creative and inventive, and also talk about alternative endings and say, well, this happened. What do you think about the ending of the story? Do you think it should have happened differently? What would you do? So that's a real great time for parents to spend time with their children and talk about, you know, what their thinking is around the stories.
Edith, you know, this has been an unprecedented challenge, but it's also an incredible opportunity. And as we're talking about storytelling today, I'm thinking about, you know, when I was a kid, I used to love when my grandmother used to tell me stories about when she was a little girl, or what she happened, or what our family used to do, or what it was like when she, you know, she was visiting here, or when she lived in the old country, or any of those things. Like I was just captivated by, you know, her telling me about what it was like when she was a little girl, or that kind of storytelling too. So what we're hearing from, you know, the groups across the country, you know, folks, we were talking about how parents and grandparents right now are the curators of curriculum. We get to decide, you know, what our kids are learning right now, you know, and a lot of folks introducing Afrocentric curriculum and Latino-centric curriculum, but storytelling and like that's actually the first kind of teaching when you think about it. And this is actually a unique moment for us to have those times to really engage with kids in that way. Can you talk to us from a teacher perspective about what you think about, you know, parents taking advantage of that moment?
Well, I think that districts also should take advantage of that moment. It's a time to reimagine and reinvent what curriculum looks like. And in this pandemic, it's a great opportunity to have project-based learning and have students to do projects that are meaningful, relevant, but also help solidify their connections with their families and gain from the wisdom of their parents. So this would be a great project would be for students to interview their parents, to talk about their childhood. Say, Mommy, what did you love when you were little? Daddy, what did you do? What did you want to be when you were small? And just to kind of ask them critical questions. So I think that that's an opportunity for children to gain from, understanding the elements of challenge that their parents are confronted with, but also get the wisdom and the experiences of their parents in every facet of their lives. I think that some districts around the country are taking advantage of project-based learning because families and students are at home, and it is a great opportunity to really bond around dinner time, around routines, around culture and language. And if you're a parent who immigrated into this country, it's a time to say, well, what made you decide to come here? All of those critical things are questions, help to build the aspiration of the child and understanding who they are, their identities, where they came from, the journeys of their parents. So I'm a big proponent on thinking about re-envisioning and reimagining what curriculum looks like. And I think you touched upon decolonizing the curriculum and providing aspirational stories of people who look like children. Often children, there's windows and mirrors. Windows are when you look out and you learn about other cultures. Mirrors are when you see yourself reflected in your own learning. And that's the most aspirational type of learning. And so this is an opportunity for districts to be aspirational in terms of how students are learning. What are they learning about the dynamic challenges of living at home, sheltering in place, learning about this pandemic and allowing children to sort of lead with their own questions, because children have questions. We don't want to impose our anxieties on children, but we want them to lead with their own questions and with their own insights about, how do you spend time with your family and still find joy despite the fact that we are in a crisis?
Yeah, I want to ask you about mindset. So, we'll talk specifically about like what we're seeing in our own urban area here in Boston, but I want to talk to you about kind of the national mindset right now. And what's been very troubling to me, while there are these beautiful moments that parents are having, and they're learning new things about their children, and frankly, things that are heartbreaking, things that are inspiring, ways that our kids learn, things they know and don't know, and how they best. So we're really informed in this moment by necessity because many of us. But what I'm seeing, in the education policy sphere, is this really bizarre mindset where it's almost as if many of them have given up on our children by saying, oh gosh, kids that were already behind, kids that were already underserved, frankly, we know the low income, the Black and brown kids, oh, these kids are going through a trauma, they're so far behind, we're never going to be able to catch them up. This mindset as if they have already given up on a generation of kids because we are going through this unprecedented crisis. Now, you and I both know, like, there is often, this positioning in education policy as if because you're poor, Black, or brown, you are somehow, automatically at a deficit. Our babies are broken just by virtue of being poor, Black, or brown. And while there are unique challenges, our children are beautiful. They are capable. They are brilliant. It's not about not having talent. It's about having equitable access to opportunity for that talent to blossom. And I'm really worried in this moment. I want to get your perspective. So talk about this, like, oh my gosh, our kids are so broken. We're just going to have to say, you know what, these kids are never going to be proficient. They're never going to be able to achieve because we've had this challenge. Are you worried about that? How do we correct this budding conversation? I want it stopped in its tracks right now. Our kids will be proficient, if not excel, because they're learning differently and learning different stuff, but that doesn't mean that they're broken.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say that that's a great question. And Samuel Patansis said that schools are white middle class spaces. And so they are designed for those who come from white middle class environments to be successful. And the other thing is that I want to emphasize that there are cultural ways of knowing, and there are funds of information that are not represented in the curriculum. And so you have this fixed mindset where, I'm going to look at you because you're poor, Black, and in my case, female. I came from a large family of 13 siblings. I was poor, grew up in Roxbury. My teachers did not believe I was college material. They weren't mean, but that was the belief system. So Carol Dweck talks about a fixed mindset where, oh, you're poor, you're Black, you're female, therefore you're invisible. But then there's the growth mindset of, I'm going to give you opportunity. Equity cannot happen without access. If you don't give me access to high quality, rigorous instruction, then I am not going to be able to learn that material. It's about access. And so in my case, throughout my elementary, middle, and high school years, by the time I got to high school, I wanted to go to college, but my teachers told me I was not college material. Why? Because I was Black, I was poor, and I was female, and I was invisible. And so I graduated at the age of 17 with no pathway to college because my teachers either laughed at me, asked me not stop bothering them, you're not college material. I, in fact, was in a work study program where I went to school in the morning and then I had a part-time job because they thought I could be a secretary. So the bottom line is that when you have that pathway for students, because of their circumstances, not because of their intellect, what you do is you create barriers for them around learning. So as a Black and brown student, my line was, okay, you're going to go from school to work. But at 17 years old, I knew that was not good enough. I saw people like me on television, not in my immediate environment, who were professionals. And I had it in my mind that this is not true, that I want more out of life. I saw my peers who took other pathways, who ended up going to jail, got into drugs and other things. And some of them didn't make it. I went to their funerals. And so as I think about my own trajectory and how I was blocked from access to college, that is still happening to Black and brown students because there's still that mindset. And the mindset is codified in policy. So we talk about data, we talk about achievement, we talk about opportunity gaps, but we don't look at policy. Policy is the guardrail that can, if changed, reduce those disparities because we are gifted and we are talented and we have rich cultural backgrounds and we have funds of knowledge, we have information. I have never met a student that was incapable of learning, whether or not they had a disability. So as a teacher, I was determined to go back to my school district as a teacher to prove that I was capable. And I ended up teaching in my high school with teachers who said I was not college material. And so the advocacy that it took for me to get into college was unusual because of my other 13 siblings. They were told, well, college is not for you as well. And my brothers in particular were placed in special education, which is another dead end pathway for our students of color. And so I say that to say that the system has not changed. The language has changed over the decades, but we still have these disparities where there is the mindset of you're Black, you're brown, you're poor, you don't speak English as a first language, college is not for you. And that's something that school districts are making very limited progress in changing, which requires parents to really step up and because parents, by and large, like my parents, trust school districts to do what they're supposed to do. But now is the time for parents to say, we've given you the opportunity, we've entrusted our children to you, and the disparities are just not closing. And unfortunately, right now, they're widening. And so we have to change our approach to this.
Yes, I think everything you're saying is so important. And I so identify, as a kid that was expelled from school in high school, growing up in difficult circumstances. They were done with me. Get the hell out. You're not college material. Thank God I got my GED through BPS, and I had strong mentors that said, nope, you're not going down that path. We're going to get you into college. And I made it to Temple, but without outside help, the system just spit me out, and they were done with me. So I so identify with that mindset. I know many of our parents right now, who I call survivors of the public education system, are really identifying with what you're saying. But I want to dig even deeper into your current work and a lot of the work that you do, because that mindset is really victimizing so many, especially of our Black and brown boys. I mean, the extraordinary work that you do every single day, taking a look at kids that have been pushed into, disciplinary situations or even incarcerations as the result of being so frustrated and underserved, and the mindset that these kids aren't capable, and so they're not taught, and the belief gap has kind of pushed them into circumstances where they're in special ed instead of having that extra attention or whatever they need to get them to access opportunity. I love what you say about access. One of the things we say is access is the new civil right. Nehemiah Frank from Tulsa, Oklahoma, one of our delegates, always drilling that down. So could you talk to us more about what you're seeing specifically? I really want to dig into your work with our boys and what you're seeing there in that injustice that's happening there.
So I think one of the main barriers is that, so districts who don't educate Black students do not put the mindset or the thought of becoming a teacher. So I wanted to be a teacher, and my teachers told me that I couldn't go to college, which is the pathway to becoming a teacher. So I never had a Black or brown teacher. All of my teachers were white. And so there's this saying that you can't be what you don't see. And if teachers in school districts are suspending Black boys at high rates, what they're doing is they're destroying the supply chain. And these Black boys are not going to ultimately become teachers so that they can be role models. Students need role models. They need representation in front of the classroom. And when you look at urban districts and you look at the numbers, we know that we don't have enough Black and brown teachers. We don't have enough Latino teachers. We don't have enough Black teachers. We don't have enough Haitian teachers. And so what are the barriers to that? Because there was a watershed research that was done that said, if a Black student has a Black teacher in the early grades, in those developmental years, just to see someone as a role model, as a teacher in front of the class, there is a 49% chance, a 49% drop in a higher chance, I believe it's about 40% chance of graduating, as opposed to never seeing a Black teacher. And so, that's a piece that we have to really think about. Why aren't districts hiring more Black Latinx teachers? And so with the diversity that we have in our schools, why don't we have people in every department in the school district that are able to communicate effectively with parents who speak the language of the parents? We know what those languages are. So there, and why aren't we studying more about, individuals who look like us? So it's about curriculum. It's about what is taught. It's about who's standing in front of the classroom. It's about having an aspirational curriculum for our young people where they see themselves. It's about engaging in literacy early. And so I do some consultant work with DYS. These are incarcerated youth, and they have been put into special education, and now they're incarcerated, but they're still reading at the 1st, the 5th grade level. Why is that? So early literacy is important. Students do not all learn the same way. If a student has difficulty with reading, which is fundamental to education, and we do not tackle that early on, that will lead to, this environment is not telling me that I'm a learner. I'm getting all kinds of messages. And so if students ask for help and teachers are not able to help them because there's a lack of professional development in early literacy in districts, we don't have reading specialists, that creates a barrier. And so students are going to find a way to develop their identity in other ways. And so the suspension rate for Black and brown boys, is something that districts need to look at, as opposed to what are the early literacy supports that are in place for students who need a different approach. It's not that these students are unable to learn, it's that there is a monolithic one-way approach to instruction that doesn't fit for all students. And we need to have more culturally responsive pedagogy. We need to have multiple pathways to ensure that students are able to pull words out of text and be able to read and engage in fantasy and imagination and problem solving and critical thinking, all of the things that are the building blocks of learning and preparing students for college and career readiness. So really looking at who are our students and matching the kind of instruction that is required to ensure that we pull out the gifts, the talents, the strengths, the abilities of all students instead of having a one-way path, because our Black and brown students are brilliant. I have met some of the most brilliant students in DYS facilities. As a teacher, there's not one student that I have never been able to teach to read with the right types of supports. And so if we have a one-way track, if you have just size 8 shoe, it's not going to fit everyone. One size does not fit all. So you're going to have, larger feet who are going to be in pain and complain. My feet are hurting. I can't walk. And if you say, okay, I want you to run this race in a size 8 shoe, and that's all I have for everyone, then you're going to have some size 8s who are going to run fluently. But then you're going to have the 7.5s, the 9.5s, the 10s who are not going to be able to function. You cannot blame it on that individual. It's the shoe that doesn't fit.
And then we punish them.
And so that's where we are in education, that we need to reimagine. And so, the parent voice is so critical in this. And so when I say, when you're talking about your child, feel free to say what your child is good at, whether it's, my child takes out the trash, is able to help with the cooking, goes to the store, runs errands, is really helpful to the family, setting the plate, even skills that you think are not important, they are critical to learning. And parent advocacy is very critical now as we think about going back to school. I say that parent voice should be front and center on determining how schools open. It's time for parents to build their own tables and say, this is where I feel comfortable with the reopening of schools. These are the things that need to be in place in order for my child to transition back to school. Parent voice is critical. And so I say for parents, schools have your children 6 hours a day. You have your child 18 hours plus the weekend. So you are the expert. You are the expert. You are the child's first teacher. And so that should be the margin of determining what happens in terms of safety, in terms of health and wellness, in terms of emotional learning, in terms of academics. There are many connections around what children do at home to what they can do in schools, even with English language arts, math, across the board.
You are lighting up parents across the country who are responding on our Facebook, especially some of our parent educators, especially Vivette Dukes, who teaches in a major school system in New York, who is a fiery advocate for parents and for educators. She is just, you are giving her life this morning. We're hearing from our friends in, let's see, Philadelphia, in Newark, New Jersey, in Lynn, Massachusetts, all over the place. Everybody is just exploding from what you're saying and so identifying. Also, Sharif El-Mekki, who is our wonderful friend from the Center for Black Educator Development in Philadelphia, who does national work trying to get, frankly, more Black men to become educators where they don't see themselves reflecting, really disrupting that pattern and of not seeing ourselves, the mirroring that you're talking about, how critically important it is for our children to see themselves reflected in classroom leadership, in district leadership, all of that. So you're really touching a lot of hearts this morning. Before we go.
I want to say also girls, and our Black girls are in trouble, our Black and brown girls, because what happens with our girls is that they're usually quiet like myself. And so they don't tell their stories of trauma. They don't say what they've experienced or what has been done to them. And in my own experience and in my own life, it's not until they hit middle school, when they're going through puberty, they might write a letter saying that I want to kill myself, or, I've had this bad experience, and no one has really captured them because they're the quiet girl sitting in the back and never speaking up. And so I was that child. And so we need to talk about what's happening to our girls as well. And the whole idea is that we know that our school districts are populated by Black and brown students. We are the face of the future. They are the future leaders. And to dismiss and to create barriers to learning for them is really killing the possibilities of the future. And I dare say that our children are dying for an education, because that is the only equalizing element to access what's available in society, both healthcare and jobs and housing and just self-advocacy and independence. I went into special education because my brothers were pushed into special education, some who didn't need it, some who had some reading disabilities, but autism also runs in my family. And I just want to say to parents, if you have a child with autism, we really need strong advocacy, because our children are segregated. My two brothers with autism were brilliant. They made the best go-karts. They were able to put things together. They were able to lead in many, many ways. And it's not okay to just receive what the district is offering. Bring to the table what gifts and talents your children have, but also their interest. We know as adults that in order for us to show our best, there has to be a connection what we're interested in. But also we use the barometer of determining whether or not someone is connecting with us. We're not going to try our best if someone does not have faith in us. And children are the same way. So talk to your children about their school experiences. Don't be so quick to believe the adult perspective. Your children have credibility, no matter how they tell you, whether they tell you through a note, through sign language, through crying, through changing their behavior. Pay attention to those signs, because children communicate in a variety of ways. And we don't want to wait until they're older and tell us that, oh, when I was in second grade, or when I was in fifth grade, or remember when I was kept back, I gave up in school. And so that does happen in our Black and brown communities, because we are not the first voice, we are the last voice. And equity is something that is not intricately embedded in the curriculum. Our design is an add-on. And we need to say that we are the majority, we are the people of the global majority. We need to be front and center in terms of how schools are constructed. And so amplify your voices, elevate your concerns. They are legitimate, and don't stop. Don't stop.
You always say something that really touches my heart, just as a mama, and especially what you just said about listening to our children. I was sitting at the IEP table a couple of months ago, and my oldest son, who has autism, has been talking to me about not feeling like people at school listen to him. And he tries to use all his coping strategies, and no one listens or pays attention to him until he gets very angry and runs out of the building and leaves, because he cannot be there anymore, because he feels like he's so unheard and things are so unfair, and it gets to that point. And so I would sit at the IEP table and say, this is what Matthew is telling me. And they'd say, oh, no. That's not true. That doesn't happen. No, he's doing fine. He's doing great. And I came home and I said, Matthew, this is what I get from your teachers. And he said, no, Mom, that's not right. That's not how I feel. The reason why, I left the building the other day and was running around the baseball diamond for 45 minutes. I had educators trying to get him back into the classroom, was because, he felt unheard and no one was paying attention to him, and he was trying his best to do what they had taught him to do to cope, but his feelings were so overwhelmed that he felt like nobody was listening to them. And it's our job as parents to step into that and to push back. It's very intimidating, because every day we have to trust that educators are going to make the best decisions for our kids and have their best interests at heart. But we as parents are warriors, and we have to be warriors for our kids, and we can't just take whatever we're given, we've got to push back, because these systems were not created for our kids, and that's our job. And even when it's tough and people get crabby with you, I mean, those educators, they get mad when I push back and say, no, I'm sorry, what you're telling me is not accurate, because my child is telling me that he is struggling and he does not like what you're doing right now, or you're not listening to him, and we've got to figure out a way for him to be able to communicate better with you. So Edith, I'm so sorry, our time is so short, but I gotta say, like, every time I talk to you, you speak truth to my heart, and you give me more fire to continue even when this work is hard. We know we have to do this work. Our voices are important no matter what. So we're just so blessed to have you as a friend and collaborator with us. And we love you so much, and hope that you and your family stay safe and well.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Joining us live from Boston. You know, Tim, I don't even have to ask her very many questions. She is the truth.
She is.
You know, she has done this her whole life. She has
That's
been,
right.
You know, not only a
Pretty
student,
amazing.
but she has been a mama, a grandmama, an educator, a fierce advocate, just extraordinary. And we're so blessed to have her wisdom and her guidance with us.
That's right.
So,
Well,
wonderful edition of
right.
NPU Live. We're going to put up a picture of the cake. So
We
if you
will.
want to see Tim's cake, I think it's worth checking in.
I'll post it.
He's going to post it. And we're going to go and have an extraordinary
Yeah, we are.
celebration.
Gotta get some planning done. Gotta order some Chinese food.
That's right. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us.
Thank you, everyone.
And we'll see you again tomorrow. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.